Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV 18, The Thought League Season 3, A Glorious Decade, A Century of Service.
Hello and welcome to Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV 18, The Thought League Season 3, a platform where pioneering minds come together to shape the future of law, business and society. In this episode, we are joined by Professor Richard Susskind, CBE KC, the world's most cited author on the future of legal services and one of the foremost voices on the impact of artificial intelligence, from serving as technology advisor to Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales to being appointed Special Envoy for Justice and AI to the Commonwealth. Professor Susskind has been at the forefront of reimagining how law, technology and humanity intersect. Alongside him is Cyril Shroff, managing partner at Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, a distinguished legal mind who has consistently championed values, purpose and innovation in the practice of law. Together, they will explore how AI is reshaping legal systems and opportunities and risks it presents, particularly in developing countries like India, and the frameworks that can help us think about AI in ways that prepare us for the decades ahead. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for joining us here on another episode.
Thank you.
Professor, if we can start with you, your new book, How to Think About AI, A Guide for the Perplexed, makes two important points. One, AI is not new, and the most recent innovations are part of a continuum of innovation since the 80s. Number two, that we should not be trapped by AI's limitations today in thinking about the trajectory that the technology can take. Can you give a few frameworks on how to think about AI and the opportunities that it brings?
Well, thank you very much. AI, in my view, actually stretches back to around 1950. So it's been with us for about 75 years. To great acclaim and to some extent astonishment, in late 2022, a system called ChatGPT emerged. And we know this is an example of what's known as generative AI, systems that can generate text and music and videos and can even write code. There's a little bit of a sense in the world community that AI was invented in late 2022. It absolutely wasn't. What I think is that generative AI, ChatGPT and its various competitors, represent a new chapter in an ongoing story that is artificial intelligence. It's not the first chapter. It's absolutely not the final chapter. Indeed, I believe it's an early chapter. We're just warming up. And there's various ways one needs to look at this technology. I worry a little bit that although generative AI has had considerable impact, people are thinking this is the end of the road. But in fact, there's no finishing line. No one in China or Silicon Valley, for example, is dusting their hands off and saying, well, that's the end of AI, we've sorted it out. Quite the reverse. The systems are becoming increasingly capable. A couple of biases I think we need to be aware of in terms of frameworks of thought. One is that there's a strong tendency in law and elsewhere for people to think that the technology doesn't apply to me. I found in my research that all professionals see far greater scope for AI in professions other than their own. And I call this not us thinking. And there has to be a rational corner in all of our minds, which allows that we surely are personally not exceptions to the advance of AI and its likely impact. Another bias is the idea that I call technological myopia. And this is the idea that we are being constrained in our view of how the technology will likely unfold by today's limitations. There are limitations in today's technology. These systems make mistakes. The data on which they rely is often biased or full of errors. But nonetheless, I think it's most realistic to expect that these systems will become better and better. I say again, our systems are becoming increasingly capable. Now, I think that one of the other barriers to thinking clearly about AI is the view that all AI will do is simply automate current activity of humans. I often say in healthcare, people think the future is robotic surgery. And this is the idea that you look at tasks where you can take out a human and plug in a machine. And people are thinking the same in law as well. The idea that I call and others call task automation. But far more significant in the long run, and this is very early days in terms of thinking and practice, is what I call innovation. Innovation, by which I mean using AI to allow us to do things that previously were not possible. So in medicine, for example, that would be non-invasive therapy rather than traditional surgery. And I would go further that there's the idea of I call elimination, where the use of AI will eliminate many of the problems for which human services currently exist. Again, look at healthcare, preventative medicine. If we can use AI to help people avoid having illness, then many of our remedies and diagnostics and treatment plans will be less necessary. The same is true in law. This is my final observation by way of introduction, that it's not just about using AI to help us solve legal problems. It's about using AI to help people avoid legal problems, to put the fence at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom. So I encourage listeners and watchers not just to think of AI as a way of replacing particular human tasks. It will redefine, it will reconfigure the way we solve all sorts of problems in society, and also will help us avoid the problems in the first place.
That's a very useful sort of construct, Professor, to kind of sort of think about where we stand and what is in the scope of the possible. So not just sort of making current tasks easier, faster, more productive, automating them, but of course, I mean, stuff that we are not able to do now, as you put it. Uh, Mr. Shroff, if I can come to you, sir, what are some of the risks and opportunities in the use of AI in developing countries like India, and what are the policy and regulatory approaches that could help?
No, thank you for that, Prashant. And I just want to sort of supplement a little bit on what Richard said in terms of what are the new possibilities.
Mm.
I can see the structure of the workforce changing dramatically with the arrival of AI and what else is to follow. Because I think instead of seeing AI just as a tool, I think we're going to start seeing AI as really as a member of your team, where we will see hybrid teams of tech man and machine effectively delivering on tasks. But that, and I think that creates a whole new sort of set of issues. Now, coming to your question on risks and opportunities, I think that list is endless. But I can pick up a few sort of high level ones for our conversation. So first, I see the biggest risk is an alignment risk. So the thing about AI is that it is, at the end of the day, it's a machine, it's an algorithm. It doesn't have values of its own. And and when we sort of look at it from a lens of human values, we will find that there is a disconnect. It is very efficient in what it does, but it does without value. So at some stage, you're going to have a non-alignment risk between the values of the technology and values of human society. The second risk that we have is what I call the actor risk, where this technology, it doesn't make a distinction between who it works for. It can fall into bad hands, and it can become a force multiplier for people who want to use it in a malicious way. So this is a problem. The third, I think we're kind of seeing increasingly that in knowledge-based firms like ours, and in some consultancies as well, is a gradual attrition of human skills. But if you get so used to technologies like this, I think there is probably a biological degradation of your thinking abilities to be as sharp and as cognitive as you otherwise would have been, because you just get used to this as well. Now, okay, I'm sure we'll find a solution to that, but this is happening today. Fourth risk, which is also, I think, quite well documented, particularly in my field, is hallucination. I think there is a data hallucination problem generally, but we have seen, in fact, there's some leading cases in the United States, and I think I know of a few here as well, where the AI just completely makes up stuff that doesn't exist, and therefore, in terms of just managing that risk, you need to have checks and balances in your organization to catch these. So I'll stop here. I think there's probably a list of another 20 of this genre. So the final answer on AI should be great tool, very, very important technological development, but handled with care.
Handled with care. That's well put. Professor and Mr. Shroff, allow me to take a quick commercial break here. I'll come back and continue this fascinating conversation. Stay tuned.
Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV 18, The Thought League Season 3, A Glorious Decade, A Century of Service. Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV 18, The Thought League Season 3, A Glorious Decade, A Century of Service.
Welcome back to the Thought League. We're in conversation with Professor Richard Susskind and Cyril Shroff, exploring the opportunities and challenges of artificial intelligence and the frameworks that can help us navigate its impact on law and society. Professor, if I can come to you, you say in your book that we will need to actually give AI a legal personality, similar perhaps to what we give companies currently. And legal concepts will have to be reimagined to address artificial intelligence. Could you explain this, sir?
Well, this is part of a more general observation. The question is the extent to which our legal system, our institutions, our concepts, our methods are going to be appropriate for use in an AI-based digital society. So if you take legislation, for example, and regulation, our processes for generating these instruments, it seems to me, are not nearly rapid enough in an AI-based world. Our approaches to dispute resolution, again, very much designed for a print-based society. So the question I'm asking is the extent to which we need not just to make what we do more efficient in law, but should we be expecting fundamental structural change? And that extends to our legal concepts as well. Much is discussed today about intellectual property and copyright, but whether or not these notions that come from the 18th century and were developed in response to the printing press should be revisited in relation to AI, I think is an extremely important subject. And in the question of legal personality, what I had in mind there was actually going beyond the personality we ascribe to or grant to organizations. But I was thinking if these systems achieve what we call AGI, artificial general intelligence, and many AI scientists believe we're only a few years from this, then these systems will be outperforming human beings at the full range of cognitive tasks that we prize as individual humans. And it seems to me if we have these remarkably high-performing systems that are central to the running of our businesses, our government, are central to our education and our healthcare, systems that will be working often autonomously without human intervention, then we have to think what kind of legal entity is this? And in some ways, I think it's more like an alien. The notion of aliens has been used a little in the world of AI. One writer spoke of, he said, an experiment. Imagine we knew that coming towards Earth was a fleet of spaceships with high-performing aliens who were more intelligent than us arriving in 10 years' time. What would we do? And it's a greater thought experiment because in a way, that's what's happening. That they're not coming from outer space, but they're being developed from within. And we would immediately wonder of aliens, how would we bring them within the primary method of social control we have, which is our legal system? So what I'm trying to do in my book is poke and prod and challenge and cajole people into thinking that the future might not just be a more efficient version of what we have today. If you look at fundamental changes historically, mentioned the printing press, think also of the Industrial Revolution. When these changes came about, we saw these pervasive, revolutionary, structural changes to social, legal, economic institutions. We should be expecting the same in respect of AI. So that's my fundamental challenge, of which legal personality is simply one example.
That's fascinating stuff, Professor. Mr. Shroff, how will Indian law and regulation, how will it have to be changed or reimagined to deal with newer forms of AI? Are we equipped? Are we thinking about this? How should we think about this?
So I think some of the issues are similar. Currently, our system doesn't envisage, doesn't have the tools to grapple with these issues because the technology is changing so fast. And we would still, I guess, approach some of these legal challenges from the conventional way, namely, for example, copyright law, or for example, where do you fix liability? or how do you fix accountability based on if somebody does something based on interaction with, say, a chatbot. For example, we saw some recent cases where people committed suicide because of some advice that it got from a chatbot as well. So where do you fix accountability for things like this? So, but it's still a conventional way of looking at things. I think in terms of, and I think this will really happen when AGI is here, because that's when it sort of goes beyond the then current ability of humans to deal with it, and we will probably have to reinvent the way we look at this. I'm not sure that we will be able to give it legal personality or not, but I think we certainly need a whole new set of laws for affixing liability on this, and thinking and imagining of what this really means, because this at some stage it will be out of human control. And the alien example is a good one, but there are no aliens, and we don't know where to pin that liability.
that we know of yet. No, absolutely, Mr. Shroff. What will catalyze action in terms of framing like regulation law? Or is it going to happen organically?
I think it'll happen organically, but I think we will have to reimagine this. Now, one of the things which I have done, as you know, is I've set up a center for reimagining the law and ethics for AI as well. But we're at early stages of that, so I think this is going to require uh, approaching analysis of this topic with a fresh mind, with no biases, and with a completely clean slate. And we have to be talking to people like Richard, who will challenge and provoke us to think differently.
Absolutely, and this program is aimed at that. Professor, what are the concerns and opportunities with the use of AI in law and the administration of justice? And should there be some sort of quote unquote no-go areas in the use of AI?
Can I just respond to the more general line of this discussion and say what we need to do is disentangle our thinking about short-term AI and long-term AI. We have everyday practical issues and problems arising for which our lawyers and our legal system have to have to be responsive. There's no question about that. What I'm arguing for at the same time is that we need to be engaged in some far longer term thinking so we're prepared when the technology arrives, when it arrives operating at a very high level. So just now, a lot of the discussion about regulation and ethics is very much about today's technology. I'm saying that's important and we need to respond in practical terms, but we also need to give ourselves the space for some long-term thinking. We need to be thinking 10 years ahead, trying to anticipate how the technology might unfold. In law, as in elsewhere, I think we need to get our heads around the idea that this technology can both bring great benefits and potentially be of considerable threat. Now, my preoccupation throughout my career and thinking about AI for more than 40 years now has been with the use of AI to improve access to justice. It seems to me as these systems become more powerful, the real excitement here, if lawyers will forgive me, is not about giving lawyers new tools, but it's empowering non lawyers to be able to understand their legal entitlements, to assert their legal rights, and to enforce them as well. So, this is going to be magnificently empowering. Great benefits there. But we also have to have a discussion, and this again is part of the long term discussion, about the extent to which, as AI systems become more and more capable, we think, for example, they might take on some kind of dispute resolution function. We would need to start thinking about the ethical boundaries. Do we think that will be a development too far? Or do we think that if these systems can provide cheap, cheerful, quick, proportionate resolution services and increase access, then that'll be fine. We haven't begun to have these debates. And again, what I've been encouraging in my new book is that we take a step back and think beyond the tools we have today and imagine a world where these systems are highly capable. Now, I'm often asked, could AI systems replace judges? I think that's the wrong question because human judges operate in their own unique way, their own unique neuropsychology and neurophysiology. A better question is, can we envisage the state providing a supplementary or a complementary but entirely different form of dispute resolution service that is based on some form of artificial intelligence? The answer to which I think is yes. But we haven't yet had, I stress again, the policy and ethical arguments. But we will certainly, in law as elsewhere, seek to draw lines. We will identify uses of technology where it's technologically feasible, but morally unacceptable. And this is the public debate that I hope I'm encouraging through my work.
Right, absolutely are. Mr. Shroff, same question to you in terms of, are there any no-go areas, the way this should be used in law, AI in law?
Firstly, I don't think there should be any no-go areas. It's about being proportionate and prescient about what changes are coming. But there will be some sort of pegs in the ground that will come up. For example, is there a fundamental right to have a human trial or a human being to dispense? We will run up against many of these obstacles and we'll find a way. But ultimately, if it is proved that what is invented through the use of AI is able to deliver a good outcome, I think we should be okay. For example, in India, the whole idea of justice is seen, sort of access to justice seen as a noble profession, whereas in other parts of the world, including UK, it is seen as a service as well. So there are consumer standards that you could apply to them. So what I think Richard was hinting at is, at what stage will we be able to, at least in India, make the transition on being able to see the right to justice as a service rather than as something else? And I think that's a conceptual change that has not yet happened over here, but I think it will happen as we see AI give more efficiencies.
I think absolutely wonderful and insightful discussion. At least it was for me, and I hope it is for the viewers as well. And I guess we have to have many more of these debates, as Professor Richard put it, and Mr. Shroff put it as well. We will continue, of course, to get you more insights. But that's it on this edition of the Thought League. A big thank you to Professor Susskind and Mr. Shroff. Their insights remind us that AI is not just a passing trend, but a part of a broader wave of innovation, compelling us to rethink law, regulation, and the role of professionals in society. The choices we make today will define how AI serves humanity tomorrow. Thank you once again for joining us. Stay tuned for more conversations with leaders who are shaping the future.
Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas presents CNBC TV 18, The Thought League Season 3, A Glorious Decade, A Century of Service.